Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to offer you some reflections on this 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time. You know, one of the things that's kind of a private pleasure of mine is to go looky-looing at houses. And I have some friends who call me up from time to time and they say, hey, we're going to go look at some houses for sale. You want to come? And I'm there. I love that kind of thing. And so they pick me up and we go wandering through these houses and so on. And they called me not too long ago and said, you know, we got our eye on this one house. You want to come look at it with us? And I said, I'm in. So we went to this house, and as we were walking toward it, I said, what about the people who live here? And they said, oh, no, they moved out. It's empty. Oh, okay. So we go walking in the front door, and as soon as I looked at it, I hated it. I didn't like the entranceway at all. The living room was kind of weird, and the kitchen was small and cramped, and the appliances were no good. I didn't like it. And some of the hallways had some neat little arches to them and stuff like that. That was great. But they showed me the closets. You like them? And no, I don't like them at all. And so we went through the whole house. And at the very end, they said, so what do you think? I said, what do I think? I don't like it. It's ugly is what I think. And they said, oh, too bad, because we just bought it. It's our house now. I died. I was mortified. And what did you tell me? And they said, oh, no, we just wanted your honest opinion. And they said, oh, don't worry about it. We don't care what you think. We like the house. We bought it. And, you know, it's okay. We're still good friends in terms of mistakes made. It's a small little mistake, embarrassing. They even told me that they've named their house Casa Fea, which is Spanish for ugly house. It just tells me I am never going to hear the end of it. But it's no big deal. It's a small mistake. But there's other times in our lives where the mistakes we've made, they're not small at all. They're huge blunders. They may even be failures. When we have failed another person in a relationship, we haven't been the spouse we should have been, or the parent or the child that we should have been. You know, when we have failed terribly in life, where maybe we got fired from a job or we've had some terrible addiction, and where do we go with that? How do we get past that which has become part of the fabric of our life? Well, I think the answer for that is found in the gospel today. Jesus in the gospel is once again telling his disciples that the Son of Man, the Messiah, is going to have to suffer and die and then rise from the dead. And he's telling them, if you're going to be my disciple, this is what you have to go through too. You're going to have your sufferings and your dying. And the disciples don't know what to make of what Jesus is saying. And it even says in the scripture, because they didn't understand, they were afraid to ask. And one of the reasons they were afraid to ask is because they were busy arguing among themselves as to who was the most important of them. And imagine it like this. Somebody is running to be president, and his inner circle are already starting to argue and jockey for position about who's going to be Secretary of State, or who's going to be the Secretary of the Treasury or the Interior, or things like that. And they're arguing about, you know, when Jesus is the Messiah, which of us are going to be on the highest rank? So Jesus asked them, you know, when they arrived at the house they were heading toward, well, what were you guys talking about along the way? They were embarrassed to tell him because of their ugly ambition. And so, knowing full well what they were arguing about, Jesus called over a small child that was in the house and put the child in the midst of them and put his arms around the child and said, if you wish to be my disciple, you must be the servant of one like this. And those who welcome a child, welcome not the child, but welcome me. And those who welcome me, welcome he who has sent me, God the Father. Now, that sounds like an endearing scene, doesn't it? I mean, Jesus having a small child, wrapping his arms around him, that sounds wonderful. It's not. There's nothing endearing about it at all. Jesus is living in a sustenance society, where people are living hand to mouth, week to week, hoping to have enough food to get through the month. And when you live in a sustenance society, there is a very clear hierarchy. And men, the males of the family, are on the top. And the children, the least productive element of a family, the least useful, are on the bottom rung of that ladder. They have potential value, but at that point in time in their life, they have none. And so, when we are looking at a small child, plus the fact, keeping in mind they had close to a 50% mortality rate, all the more reason to see them as dispensable. So when we see a child, we're seeing something that's dispensable, that's not of great value. And Jesus is taking that child and placing that child in their midst and wrapping his arms around them, and what he is saying to them is, the least valuable, the most vulnerable members of this family, of this world in which we live, those are the ones you have to serve. Those are the ones you have to suffer for. That's what you must do if you wish to be my disciple. When we hear that message, we ask ourselves, who do I know in my family, in my world, that is the most vulnerable, the most disposable, the ones who are kind of cast outs or living on the margins of society? I think of a friend of mine was such a vibrant man, so energetic, and now because of his health, it's limited to a wheelchair and a walker, and it's all he can do to make his way across the living room, and that's it. Tell me, do you think someone like that is vulnerable? Do you think someone like that is at a low rung in terms of how important they are to society? You bet they are. Or someone who has gone through a terrible failure, like a divorce, and whenever divorces happen, people around them kind of divide into camps, and they stay friends with one but not the other. Tell me, those people who have gone through a divorce, or if you've experienced one yourself, tell me, that when you had that kind of a failure in your life, do you feel like a success? Do you feel like you're on top of the world? No. We all know people who, because of accident in life, or because of illness, or because of whatever, they feel like failures. And what the disciple of Jesus is called to do for those people, rather than push them toward the margins of society, is to embrace them. And not just maybe people within our own social circle, but think too, in our world, our society, who are the ones who are the least valuable, the ones who are pushed aside? I think of people maybe of color, who can feel very acutely the fact that society marginalizes them because of the color of their skin. And even if they complain that they can't get that job, or they can't get into that college because of bigotry against them, because of the color of their skin, even if they bring that up, what do they often hear? Oh God, don't start that color thing again. Quit throwing down the race card, will you? And so all the more are they marginalized because of that. Or how about being an immigrant in our country right now? Talk about somebody who might easily understand themselves to be someone that other people do not want to have here in our country. Do you think they feel marginalized? Maybe even failure? These are the ones that are the most vulnerable, and these are the ones that Jesus says we must serve. And why should we? Well, because as we all know, there are times in our lives when we've been the ones who are marginalized. We've been the ones who have failed. I've made terrible mistakes in my life, and I'm ashamed of them. And how is it that I want to be treated when those moments arrive? And how is it I want people to look and touch me and treat me and embrace me when I have failed terribly? There have been times in my life when I didn't deserve the mercy I received, but I received it, and I'm grateful for it. And as it says in Matthew's Gospel, The gift you have received, you must give as a gift. If when I have been a failure, when I have blundered terribly, if I have received mercy, then I must give mercy. When I have been at my most vulnerable, if someone has stood by me and supported me and given me their strength, well, then that is what I must do for others. I must do it. And if I do it, well, I do it not just for that person, but I do it for Christ himself. And if I do it for Christ himself, I do it not just for him, but for he who sent him. I'm embracing God himself. That's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. We must embrace God himself as he lives in the most vulnerable of us all.